Hello. Welcome back. My name is Crystal and I love horror movies. And if you're looking for a fun, spooky, chill setting, I'm your girl. So on this channel, I do deep dives of whatever films or TV shows that we're talking about. There are timestamps on the bottom if you want to skip around a little bit. Don't worry, not gonna be offended. And once you finish this episode, be sure to do all the good stuff like comment, share, like, subscribe, if you want to. So as you can tell from the title, we are going to be doing a deep dive into the 2022 film SISSY. We follow best friends Cecilia and Emma, who run into each other after a decade. Cecilia is invited to Emma's bachelorette weekend, where she gets stuck in a remote cabin with her high school bully and a taste for revenge. It was written and directed by Hannah Barlow and Kane Sainez, and it stars Barlow and Aisha Dee. Barlow plays Emma, and Dee plays Cecilia, or Sissy, hence the title. Okay, so I love a good horror movie about influencers and social media and this instant gratification from parasocial relationships and the real side of being an influencer. I just eat that up. And we're going to get into that a little bit later, so definitely stick around. So the film starts and we're introduced to preteens Emma and Cecilia, who are in their vlogging era. You guys always come at me for pronouncing things wrong, so I'm very hypervigilant of the way that I pronounce things. And we learned that their mothers were pregnant with them at the same time. So we have some bonding very early in life and of course through their adolescent years. And then we transport into present day and we see that Cecilia is older, in her 20s, and she is a wellness influencer. And she preaches positivity, good vibes, meditation, boundaries, and she does these affirmations where she says I am loved, I am safe. And she preaches all of this to her 200,000 followers on her social media. We also learn that she has some pretty decent brand deals along with being an influencer, like this fancy face mask. So once the camera shuts off, we start to see the real side of Cecilia. And she gets these hits of dopamine when she sees the comments and likes and her followers go up. She also lives in a relatively normal, messy space. She eats pizza. She has dirty dishes in the sink. This was an interesting social commentary on influencers in general about the contrast of what we think their lifestyles are to what they actually are, which, as I mentioned, we're going to dive into a little bit later. We then have our meet cute between Emma and Cecilia at the pharmacy. And we have to assume that they fell out of touch, but we're not really sure why yet. But before their reconciliation, we see that Cecilia is intrigued by some pink hair dye that she does eventually buy. So during this reconciliation between the two friends, we see that Cecilia is sort of gobsmacked at seeing her old friend, which gives us a hint into Cecilia's world. And we can probably assume that she is much more of a hermit now, and she might be pretty lonely. We also learn that Emma is now engaged, which sets the entire precedent and which is essentially the catalyst for this entire movie. Emma, who is engaged to her fiance Fran, invites Cecilia to their engagement party later that night. So while at the engagement party, we meet Fran, Emma's fiance, and the rest of their close friend group, which includes Tracy and Jamie. We also see at this party that Cecilia is a little bit reserved. She's a little bit shy, but she is embraced by Emma and Emma's new friends. So while Emma is in her super intoxicated state, she extends the invitation to Cecilia to come to her hen's weekend. Now, before I started doing my notes for this video, I wasn't sure what a hen's weekend is, and essentially it's just a bachelorette party. We see that Cecilia is a little bit hesitant at first, but then Emma insists that she comes, and she sends her a text message with the address, and she sends a message with the address that says, "Be there or die." And then we learn about another one of Emma's friends, and her name is Alex. And we get a flashback of younger Emma, Alex, and Cecilia in school, and Alex is giving Emma a best friends forever necklace. And we can tell from this younger version of Cecilia, we can tell from her demeanor that Alex just didn't take too kindly of Cecilia and Emma being best friends. So after leaving the engagement party, Cecilia makes a pit stop to dig up an old time capsule that her and Emma buried on Emma's 13th birthday. And inside was a poster, some gold nail polish, and a camcorder that contained the videos that we saw in the beginning of this movie. So after falling asleep watching their old videos and dyeing her hair bright pink, which we saw her buy earlier at the pharmacy, Cecilia falls asleep and has a nightmare about a younger version of herself saying, "I'm not a sissy. It's not my fault." The group is now on their way to the Hens weekend, and it's a nice montage of them all in matching rainbow sashes and bonding and laughing. But before they get to their destination, we learn that Alex is waiting for them at the house they had rented for the weekend. We then get a flashback of Alice just being the worst thing you could be in middle school, a bully. So while lost in her bad thoughts, Cecilia accidentally hits an animal and it's badly wounded, so the group decides to run over it and put it out of its misery. Because according to Fran, Emma's fiance, it's the humane thing to do. But before they can put the animal out of its misery, we get a quick flash of a younger version of Alex from school with a huge gash on her face with a small bloody garden shovel beside her. The group arrives at the rented home, and we can tell that the dynamic between the entire group shifts. Emma, Fran, Jamie, and Tracy, and now Alex sort of have their own adult bond. And we also notice that Alex has a scar on her face from what we can assume is from that small gardening shovel that we saw in the scene before. We also see that Alex is really not happy that Cecilia has been invited. Alex then pulls Emma aside so they can talk, and she is calling Cecilia crazy. She's calling her a psycho. And we hear Emma tell Alex that she didn't even remember inviting her, and she didn't even think that Cecilia would show up. We're going to talk about that later. So we get more of this isolation dynamic between Cecilia and the rest of the group, and they sort of forget that she's even there. Cecilia, trying to intertwine herself back in with the group, presents her and Emma's time capsule to the group as an early wedding present. She then proceeds to play their old videotapes on the camcorder, and Emma seems to be the only person that actually cares. The video is then turned off by Alex, telling everybody that dinner is ready. Another thing to note here is that Alex and Emma still wear their best friends forever necklace, and that Alex is Emma's maid of honor for her wedding. Okay, so at the dinner, this dinner was a little uncomfortable, but of course necessary to the story. The group asks Cecilia what she does for work, and when they find out that she's an influencer, they are a little judgmental, and they also find out that Cecilia has more followers than Alex, and Alex doesn't take too kindly to that. So during this conversation at dinner, we can tell that Cecilia is a little embarrassed about having all these eyes on her about what she does for a living. Alex, being one of the villains in this story, makes a mockery of Cecilia's work and tells her that she is profiting off of people's pain and how she doesn't even have a degree and just how Cecilia isn't qualified to be doing this. Jamie then adds in his thoughts and says that it also is unethical because Cecilia deals with strangers' mental health and someone might, because she might not check her DMs. Basically, they are calling her a fraud. Then we learn that Fran, Emma's fiance, is almost a certified psychologist, and Alex throws in another banger and calls it pathetic that Cecilia doesn't help real people with real problems like Fran is doing, or will eventually do. And Alex continues to call Cecilia Sissy, which was her nickname back in middle school. And we find out that Cecilia doesn't like to be called Sissy anymore. Then we get this interesting scene of Emma comforting Cecilia in a bathtub and telling Cecilia that everything happened between all of them was a lifetime ago, and how Alex has done some pretty messed up stuff since then, and that whatever happened back then, Cecilia was a child and it was an accident. So it's now later in the night and the group has all gone to bed, and Cecilia has another nightmare. And in this nightmare, Alex confronts Cecilia, and it seems like she wants to kind of put all this animosity behind them, call a truce. But then we get this really messed up scene of Alex asking Cecilia if she can help her with the scar on her face, and then proceeds to push Cecilia's fingers into her cheek skin. And then Cecilia wakes up. So when Cecilia wakes up, she is greeted by a handmade map that's on the coffee table, and it brings her to where the rest of the group is lounging, relaxing by the river. But before Cecilia can fully join the group, she overhears their conversation, and the conversation is about her and the thoughts that the rest of the group have about her. Fran brings up that Emma never really talked about Cecilia and how it's odd that she was there now. And then Alex informs the rest of the group that when they were younger, Cecilia used to follow Alex around like a puppy dog until Alex had to put a stop to it. We then get another flashback that Emma was having her birthday party and she didn't want to invite Cecilia. And Alex was the one who told Cecilia that she wasn't invited. So as the group continues their conversation and Cecilia is hiding behind a tree listening to the conversation, Emma defends Cecilia, saying that Alex wasn't innocent in this whole thing either, and how Alex was actually the one who kind of started it and was the bully. This causes Alex and Emma to fight, to which Emma and the rest of the group leave, leaving Alex alone, who was well aware this entire time that Cecilia could hear their conversation. Cecilia tries to brush it off and joins Alex by the river. Cecilia then tries to apologize to Alex, and it does feel very genuine, but Alex wants nothing to do with it. Alex then takes Cecilia's phone and pressures her into telling her followers what she did to Alex back when they were in middle school. There's a fight to get the phone before this video is uploaded, but before it can fully upload, Cecilia grabs this huge crystal rock that the group brought with them for probably good vibes, and smashes it into the back of Alex's head, and she cancels the upload. We then learn how Alex got the scar on her face from Cecilia when Alex was chanting "Sissy the Sissy" and was enticing everybody in middle school to also chant it, while Emma, her supposed best friend, only looked on and wasn't trying to defend her at all. So obviously Cecilia had enough and shoved a gardening shovel into Alex's cheek, hence the scar. Cecilia then drags Alice's body through the woods and she buries her, but before she does this, she takes the best friends forever necklace off of Alex, puts it around her neck, and then she has this moment of like pure happiness. She like has her eyes closed and she looks very peaceful. She then proceeds to go live on her social media about how being kind and small acts of kindness just make the world a better place. But then she hears Jamie, so she hides, and he comes upon where Cecilia has just buried Alex. What's funny about this scene is that we see Cecilia has taken the time to like decorate this mound of dirt where she just buried Alex. Jamie then proceeds to pee on this mound of dirt, and we see a little bit of Alex's face start to be uncovered in the dirt by Jamie's pee. Jamie then spots Cecilia and he sees that she is covered in dirt and a little bit of blood, and he is starting to get suspicious. He then trips over Alex's body and Cecilia tries to act surprised, but Jamie, knowing that Cecilia was the one who gave Alex the scar, he panics and he runs away. Another thing to note here is that Jamie is disabled, so Cecilia is able to catch up to him, but now Jamie is like backed up onto this very steep ledge. As Cecilia is trying to reason with Jamie, they both hear Tracy calling for Jamie. But before Jamie can call out to Tracy, Cecilia pushes him and pushes him off the rock, and then she proceeds to hide behind a big rock away from Tracy. So back with the rest of the group, we have this bonding moment between Emma and Fran, but Emma really isn't having it, so she just leaves. Emma then goes on to find the rest of the group, and she is calling Alex, but only hears her phone ringing, so she's trying to get to Alex's phone, and while she is doing this, she is just like swept down the river that they are all just hanging out at. So at this point, everybody is separated. Emma is trying to get back to the house. Cecilia is also trying to get back to the house. Tracy is back at the house watching reality television, and Fran is napping outside in the woods alone. So once Cecilia makes it back to the house, she proceeds to cut her arm with a stick. And then she tells Tracy that Alex was the one who did it. Tracy then runs her a bath to soothe her, and Cecilia finds out that Tracy knows what she did to Alex back in middle school. Cecilia obviously a little upset with this. She tries to reason with Tracy, but at this point we can tell that Tracy is just like super scared of Cecilia and just trying to get away from her. As soon as Tracy crosses the threshold to get away from Cecilia, Cecilia pushes her backwards into the bathtub that is full of water. And somehow Tracy's hair gets caught in the drain and she drowns, but not before she gets scalped. Now we can see a little bit more of like this cryptic side of Cecilia starting to show, because she sort of just like stares at Tracy's dead body. Oh, and Alex isn't really dead, just like a really, really bad head wound as she pops up out of the ground. Cecilia then starts to pack all of her stuff and decides to get out of there as fast as she can. She steals Alex's car, but before she can make it too far, she sees Fran pop out of the woods. Fran gets in the car and she's telling Cecilia that she can't find anybody and nobody's answering their phones. So in this scene, we dive a little bit deeper into Cecilia's psyche. When Fran asks her where Emma is, Cecilia responds, "That's your job. She's your fiance. You're the one that's supposed to take care of her and know where she is because you love her so much." She also adds in that Emma and her were the ones that were supposed to be friends forever. They were supposed to grow old together in a nursing home. And while she's doing this, she's like accelerating very quickly. And of course, Fran can't get her seatbelt on. Fran tells Cecilia this, tells her to slow down, tells her to stop the car. So Cecilia does this. She slams on the brakes and Fran flies through the windshields, and we get a repeat of the scene from earlier when they run over the animal. Fran is still alive, sort of, and Cecilia repeats over and over again, "It's the humane thing to do. It's the humane thing to do. It's the humane thing to do," as she runs over Fran's head. And we get a very nice little slow-mo scene, nice little gory slow-mo scene there. Cecilia then decides it's best to go back to the house to plot the ultimate revenge on her best friend, Emma. Oh, and Alex is like crawling through the woods when she finds what I think is Emma's phone. And then she finds Jamie's crutch. Then she finds Jamie, who obviously is very dead. We then meet the local law enforcement, who seem to just be like very like small town, mediocre, but we'll get back to that in a minute. So Cecilia gets back to the house and she is confronted with this painting that she saw earlier, which we can assume is a representation of her younger self. And she grabs her phone to rewatch her live from earlier. And the words, "Come on, sissy, don't be a sissy," are like repeating in her head. And then she starts maniacally laughing. And then the picture whispers to her, "Get it done." She then proceeds to hit herself over and over in the face with her phone. And then she goes live on her social media and she tells her followers that Alex has killed her friends and that Alex is coming for her next before she passes out. Cecilia is then awoken by Emma, and Emma is like rushing around to get towels. And she finds a towel under the bed, which Cecilia used to wrap up Tracy's dead body. So, of course, Emma finds Tracy's dead, scalped body. Emma is then confronted with Cecilia trying to convince her that Alex was the one who did all of this. But then Emma spots the best friends forever necklace is around Cecilia's neck, and she pretty much knows the truth at this point. Emma wants to call the police, but Cecilia says no, there is no time. And then Emma falls backward and she hits her head. She's not dead, she's just knocked out. So with about 15 minutes left in the film, we see that Cecilia has tied Emma to a chair. She has dyed Emma's hair pink, and now she is cutting Emma's hair, while their old videos are playing on the TV, where they both have pink hair and they're vowing to be best friends forever. Cecilia then goes and grabs their gold nail polish, and while she is doing that, Emma is able to get herself out of the chair and then use the best friends forever necklace to get herself out of the restraint that has her hands tied. Cecilia comes back, sees this. Emma is able to strangle Cecilia with the makeshift restraint, but Cecilia then grabs some scissors and stabs Emma Emma in the back. Emma then asks Cecilia where Fran is, to which Cecilia says, "It's not my fault, it was an accident." So at this point, Cecilia is trying to comfort Emma and say we're gonna get through this, but Emma is like, "Nope, you're a monster, you're a psychopath, you're crazy." And she throws their homemade time capsule box into the fireplace. This is when Cecilia realizes that Emma was never really her true friend, and that Emma only cared about people liking her, and that Emma just took pity on Cecilia when they were younger. So while Cecilia is having this realization, Emma is calling the police. Cecilia then grabs a glass bottle and breaks it and runs after Emma, and now the two are fighting on top of a kitchen table, and Emma somehow is able to get herself on top of Cecilia and is just beating the shit out of her. But then we see a mangled Alex come into the house with Jamie's crutch, pushes Emma off of Cecilia, and starts beating Emma with Jamie's crutch, full on bashing her best friend's head in, not realizing that it was her, and then killing her. We then see that Cecilia starts recording Alex doing all this, but before Alex can do anything else, we hear a gunshot, and it's the local cop shooting Alex in the head. A bloody mess, if I do say so myself. As the rest of the police force arrives, Cecilia finds the other half of the best friend's necklace, and she puts them together. Then she sits back and she watches the old videotapes again. So we do get a little bit of insight here that when Emma was all grown up, she wanted to have pink hair and drive an old yellow car, which, if you can remember from the beginning of the film, that is the car that Cecilia drives now, and obviously Cecilia's hair is now pink. We then see a healed and back to her normal self Cecilia in a much more sophisticated, more professional recording space, and she is promoting her new book called Don't Survive, Thrive. And she is telling her now 10 million followers that she was the sole survivor of the Alex massacre. And the film ends. Okay, so let's unpack this horror comedy, shall we? I really enjoyed this movie. It had some very brutal scenes mixed with sparkles and these Disney Tim Burton-esque music. The cast was beautiful, and I loved watching Aisha Dee. She had so much expression without really saying anything. She also had this really sweet, innocent demeanor. So when she did start hitting people in the head with crystal rocks and pushing people off of mountains, it was sort of a good for her moment, because these people were shit. So speaking of our friend group, we have our villains, then we have Cecilia. I love when horror movies make us root for the bad guy. Tracy and Jamie were sort of filler characters, but they did make me laugh because they had these really funny one-liners. When they ran over the animal, Jamie said that it wasn't cool because he's a vegan. And then the two later in the film are bantering over Brie because Jamie is apparently lactose intolerant. And I mean, this friend group, they're just very self-centered. They're entitled, but it seems like they like spending time with each other. And the relationship between Fran and Emma did seem genuine at best. Okay, so moving on to Cecilia, Emma, and Alex. So we know that these three are bonded for life by this trauma that they experienced when they were 12 years old. And how Alex and Cecilia are very deeply affected by it still, and Emma sort of just moved past it. We have to assume that after the incident when they were younger, no one was friends with Cecilia anymore. She probably had to move schools, move towns. We really aren't sure, but what we do know is that Alex and Emma obviously stayed friends, and as they got older, they brought in new friends and new partners like Jamie, Tracy, and Fran. Now, this may be a controversial take, but I think Emma was a villain in addition to Alex. Okay, so just hear me out, all right? Emma invited Cecilia to her hen's weekend without even thinking of the implications it would have had on her supposed best friend and maid of honor, Alex. Alex said it herself that she is reminded of what happened every single time that she looks in the mirror. And don't you think that if this is your best friend that you've had since you were 12, that you would think about her and think about the implications it would have on her if you invited the person that did this to her in the first place. I understand that it was an accident. They were young and everything, but I don't know. That just came off really weird to me. And I really feel like if Cecilia would have known that Alex was there, she would have said, I don't think it's a good idea if I come. Even during the conversation between Alex and Emma is saying, like, she didn't even remember inviting Cecilia. She didn't even think that she would show up. And Cecilia overheard this. If this was me, like, I would be out. If I was somewhere and I knew that someone was uncomfortable with my presence, I'm leaving. Like, I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. But Cecilia stayed because, as I mentioned, Cecilia was lonely and she missed her friend. She built herself into this like mega social media influencer, and she really only had these parasocial relationships. We have to also assume that it was because she was stuck in the past, like clinging on to her first and her truest friendship with Emma. And she was also definitely still holding on to the betrayal that she felt from Emma as well. She had a lot of like pent up anger and hurt from Emma and from what Emma and Alex did to her as a child. And we have to assume that she's pushing all of these feelings like deep down. But when she is confronted with the presence of her oldest friend and her bully, she snaps. And who can blame her? And I'm not saying here that I condone violence, but you know, bullying is just, it's dumb. It's not cool. The thing that I liked most about this film is that it just like felt real. We are all constantly bombarded by like these internet gurus who want to help people, but sometimes they're the ones that need the most help. Cecilia branded herself as this stable, confident, peaceful person to her followers, but in reality, she was none of these things. And I'm not harping on her at all. It's just a unique way to like look into the lives of people around us who we think have it all figured out, but in reality, they probably don't. I mean, the catalyst of this whole thing was Alex once again bullying Cecilia by taking her phone, like her property, to expose her to her followers. And Cecilia, who had spent a lot of time probably building this up, reacts by hitting her over the head to save her reputation, her livelihood. Once again, I'm not saying that I condone violence, but you know, don't be a bully. That's just mean. I think what Cecilia did was she lumped this friend group as being like one big bully, and essentially they were all taking away her friend Emma. She felt threatened by them all because she was reminded of how she felt when she was younger and how she wanted revenge. But then at the end of the film, she realized that Emma was just as bad as they all were. Yes, there were moments throughout the film of Emma trying to defend Cecilia to her friends, but Emma wasn't innocent in this either. And the ending was just a nice little wrap up of what happened to Cecilia. I mean, she got even more famous and she ended up writing a self-help book. We have to assume that she is still a little damaged, but who knows? Maybe now she is living a more authentic lifestyle because in her mind, she dealt with her past trauma. I mean, she dealt with it with murder, but you get it. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you so much if you made it this far. I always appreciate you if you do. And you guys can follow me on my social media if you want to. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.